Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Param Varishtham Brahmishtham Paramanandarupinam Paramarthanandayatim Sadgurum Pranatosmyaham. Last week, since we had a specific question on the chanting of Sadhana Sampattih and Poorna, I have given a link here to Swamiji's chant on all the Shanti Pathas. So those of you who are interested in picking up the chant correctly with the swaras, please definitely listen to Swamiji and pick up this chant. Not only Sadhana Sampattih and Poorna, all the Shanti Pathas are there. So with this, we will proceed into the class proper. Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnana Pradam Gurum Mumukshunam Hitarthaya Tattvabodho Bhidiyate. Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampanna Adhikarina Moksha Sadhana Bhutam Tattva Viveka Prakaram Vakshyamaha. This initial introductory sentence, as I said in the last class, serves as a preface to the book Tattvabodha. So whenever you look at the book, when you get a chance, you will see, right? Any book, you will have a preface and there will be a foreword. And similarly, in our traditional Sanskrit, we have what this place called preface or foreword. And as I said, it's a very structured way in which it is presented, and 4 factors are presented. As I said in the last class, I am just trying to revise this so that you don't forget what we did in the last class. So 4 factors are to be presented. The subject matter has to be mentioned. What is the teaching given in this book, the subject matter? They should mention the benefit of studying this book, the subject matter, the benefit, right? And then you also have the candidate and the connection between all of these together, right? So, Anubandha Chatushtayam, and in short, I said, you can remember CBSE, SC, CBSC, right? So, the connection between the benefit, the subject matter, and the candidate. That is the last one. So, now, in this, how is this addressed? In this particular text, Tattvabodha, I said the previous sentence is representing the Anubandha Chatushtaya. So let us see quickly how it is represented. First, he mentions a person, right, with 4 qualifications. Such a person is a candidate, okay, Adhikari. In Sanskrit, Adhikari, he says, Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampannadhikarinam. Those qualified people endowed with 4 preparatory virtues or disciplines, right? So that is don't get too worked up about why I'm not explaining the 4 disciplines or the 4, qualifications, because all of this is part of the text. It will come in detail, and within 1 or 2 classes, we will see all of them. So, Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampannadhikarinam, the qualified people are ones who are endowed with 4 preparatory virtues. That much, if you remember, it's enough. Then, Moksha Sadhana Bhutam Tattva Viveka Prakaram. So, Tattva Viveka means inquiry into Tattvam. As I said, Tattvam is synonym with Atma, Brahman, right? In the last class we saw. So, it is basically reality inquiry, right? That's all. And guided inquiry, conducted inquiry, like a guided tour, right? So, Tattva Viveka Prakaram is the subject matter of this book, and that is why the text is itself called Tattvabodha. Right? So Tattvabodha is the name of the text. So the candidate, right, mentions the subject matter. The candidate is mentioned, the subject matter is mentioned. Then moksha sadhana bhutam, the knowledge which is born out of inquiry, right? The means by which one can get moksha, right? So that the liberation, right? The means of attaining the liberation, right? Therefore, that is the benefit of this text. So you get the, what is the benefit? The benefit is you get to know the means of getting moksha. So candidate is a person with 4 qualifications. Subject matter is the truth inquiry. The benefit is the liberation. So the word moksha or mukti, which is a widely used word in the Shastra, it's a very profound and versatile word, which is actually got a lot of meanings, right, according to the context. But here the simplest of the meanings, moksha means freedom. Now immediately the question will be, freedom from what? We can easily arrive at the meaning freedom, right? So here the topic is Tattvabodha, knowledge of the truth. The truth of what? The truth of Brahman, right? Truth of Atma, the truth of the reality, the truth of individual, the truth of God, the truth of world, right? That's how we understood what is Tattva. So once you know all of these, right, what happens? You have freedom from ignorance of these 3 factors, right? The Jiva, Jagat, and Ishvara, right? So whenever we get any knowledge, we are free from the ignorance of that knowledge. So the knowledge is what frees a person of the ignorance. So Tattva will give me freedom from Tattva Ajnanam, right? So freedom from ignorance. Then the scriptures say, because of any ignorance, we have false notions. So whenever we are ignorant of something, right, the ignorance leads to what? Misconception, misunderstanding, right? So ignorance leads to misconceptions. Therefore, because of the ignorance of my real nature, Tattvam, which is my real nature, right, I have several misconceptions about myself because I don't know the real nature of me, right? Very, very important. So therefore, I have several misconceptions about me. Let me just quickly check. Are you able to see my screen? Suvarna Bhagini or Bharadwaj?
Yes, ma'am.
You're able to see?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, therefore, I have several misconceptions about me. And similarly, when I don't know the real nature of God, what happens? Right? So, I will have several misconceptions about God also. And each religion has got its own concept of God. And some people say God is not there. Some people say God is there. Some people say my God is the only God. Some people say God is everywhere. So the God has form of one kind, it has form of another kind, and in some other religions or philosophies, they believe, or in some families, they believe it, God is not in any form. It is available everywhere, right? So many notions are there. They are all born out of what? Ignorance. So when I get knowledge, what happens? Not only will I be free from ignorance, I will be free from all the misconceptions about the Jiva, that is the individual, the Jagat, the world, and Ishvara, all of them, right? When it comes to Jiva, what are some of the misconceptions that I have? Mind-boggling. We never think about it also when we don't look into Vedanta. Am I the body? Right? Have you ever inquired into it? Are we the physical body which is dying on a particular day? Or is there something that is surviving this physical body which will travel, right? What happens is when somebody passes away in the family, that is when you start thinking about, oh, what's happened to my father? What has happened to my mother? He was there till yesterday, right? What has happened to him? Is he still there? In what form is he there? Etc. Right? Does he survive? Does he travel? Where will he be born? Will he be born here or elsewhere? Immediately or after some time? Hundreds of questions, right? Especially when somebody dies. These questions come, right? So, whether he is a body, whether he is someone who survived the body, whether he travels, right? All these doubts go away with Tattvabodha. So the ignorance goes away, the misconceptions go away. Therefore, the moksha from ignorance. So freedom from ignorance, freedom from false notions. Finally, very important point, according to Shastram, all human problems are because of self-ignorance and self-misconception only. According to our scriptures, the problems are not outside, the problems are within me only. Right? Pujya Swamiji Dayananda Saraswati, in fact, has written a book. The problem is you, the solution is you. Not knowing this, we are constantly trying to adjust the world. We are either trying to change the body or our mind or positions or our profession, or we are trying to adjust somebody in the family to suit our need, right? So we are going on adjusting all of this for how many years? 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, maybe even 70 years, right? Now, a very, very mind-boggling fact is, suppose you are in a large room and there is a fan in one corner and there are some 20, 25 fans, and you are going to the switchboard on the other end and going on trying to turn, right, the regulator and trying to switch on the fan which is in this end, not knowing that this fan does not have a regulator at all and maybe there is a switch somewhere else. It's exactly like that. We try to go on adjusting all the various knobs, right, outside, without looking at how we need to address this problem, because the solution is within us, right? This is something which is mind-boggling, and Tattvabodha reveals this to us. So according to Vedanta, the switchboard is not outside, it is in me. Self-ignorance and self-misconception is there in me. I am a mortal individual is the most fundamental misconception. So according to our scriptures, because of this misconception alone, 50% of all our problems are generated. Another 50% of problems are wrongly seen as problems because of misconception. So 50 are generated because of misconception, and another 50% are because they are wrongly seen as problems because of misconception. So many of them are not really problems, but they are innocent facts of life. Suppose you say there is a problem because fire is hot. Fire is hot is not a problem. It is the nature of fire. So when I call a fact a problem, I will never be able to solve that problem, because facts can't be changed. So nature can't be changed because it is nature. So 50% of our problems are because we are not able to see fact as fact, nature as nature. So therefore we wrongly call them as problems. So wrong perspective is again because of self-ignorance and self-misconception, right? So suppose we wear yellow glasses and then say, oh, the world is yellow, right? The world is not yellow, the glass is yellow, right? So according to Vedanta, self-ignorance and self-misconception have caused the whole problem called human bondage, otherwise called bandha, which Swamiji refers to as the MBBS problem. Meaningless, burdensome, boring struggle. Life has become MBBS, right? So just to remember this, meaningless, burdensome, boring struggle. When I have a negative attitude to life, it is called bondage, right? So moksha is freedom from human problems caused by ignorance and misconception. So moksha sadhana bhutam tattva viveka prakaram vakshyamaha. So the candidate has been said, the subject matter has been said, the benefit has been said, then the connection is also being mentioned. The connection is the knowledge will directly give me freedom from all the three ignorances, right? So there is a direct connection. So knowledge removes ignorance, misconception, and all the problems are gone, like waking up from a dream. Exactly like that. When I wake up from a dream, I lose my self-ignorance and self-misconception. In dream, I'm dreaming, right? And I take myself to be a dreamer. Then all the dream problems come. The moment I wake up, that is gone, and the problems are also gone. The connection is direct. Thus, this is the preface of Tattvabodha, right? So now we will enter the proper discussion, very interesting discussion. Some of this portion will sound so much like science as we start going in deeper, maybe from the next class itself. It will really sound like science. Oh, we never knew that such aspects existed, you will feel. Also, interestingly, I found 4 or 5 doctors who are registered for the course. I don't know whether they are doctorates in other subjects or doctor by profession. It will be interesting to hear what you feel about all of these topics that are going to come up as we start progressing, and maybe towards the end, we will open up for discussion after a couple of classes. Okay, Swarna Bhagini, we will read the whole thing and then I will take up the section. Sadhana Chatushtayam Kim. Oh, I think Swarna Bhagini is on mute. 1 second.
Sadhana Chatushtayam Kim.
Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha.
Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha.
Iha Mutrartha Phala Bhoga Viragaha.
Iha Mutrartha Phala Bhoga Viragaha.
Shamadhi Shatka Sampattihi.
Shamadhi Shatka Sampattihi.
Mumukshutvam Cheti.
Mumukshutvam Cheti.
So, the first part, Sadhana Chatushtayam Kim, right? Nitya, Anitya, Vastu, Vivekaha. So, Vivekaha is a very important word that we must remember, right? We will be using that as a short form. So, while defining the candidates in the preface, in the foreword, right? We have to remember, right? The ideal candidate does not exist. But the ideal candidate is one who has got the 4 preparatory qualifications, which he calls the internal wealth, right? Who is very rich in the internal wealth of these 4 preparatory qualifications. Such a person is said to be having 100% qualification, right? We all will have qualifications, not that we will not have. Otherwise, you cannot come for these classes. Even the mere attending this class is because there was a curiosity, right? So it is very, very important to note that everybody has these qualifications in some level. Some will have 10, 20, 30%, 40%, 90% like that. So as we improve, our benefit from these classes also will become more and more. Therefore, he introduces the qualifications, Sadhana Chatushtayam. Chatushtayam means 4-fold. Sadhana means preparatory qualifications. Kim, here the author is presenting the whole text in the form of a question and answer, right? A dialogue form. So you have to imagine a guru and a shishya. There are 2 people. The entire text is like that. So one person is asking the question, the guru is the shishya is asking, and the guru is answering. So these are the qualifications, the first one, right? First, he names them here and then he explains them also in detail. So the first qualification is Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha. Vivekaha means the discriminative knowledge or discerning the difference. Swamiji actually prefers not to use the word discrimination, but he says discerning because discrimination these days is used with a negative connotation, right? So what is this? The discerning of which difference? The two entities which are Nitya and Anitya. So the whole universe consists of only two things. One of them is the eternal reality or truth, the Tattvam, which we are going to study and discover. So that is Nityam, right? Which is Brahma Tattvam, Atma Tattvam, that is Atma is Nityam. Everything else which comes outside of this is Anityam, non-eternal or impermanent. So the entire universe we experience will come under what? Non-eternal, ephemeral, impermanent. Some of them may have long life, some of them will have shorter life. You take an amoeba and you take galaxies, right? Look at the time scale, how different it is, right? But both are impermanent only. Mosquito will live for a few days, amoeba for a few seconds maybe. And there are others which will live for thousands and millions of years, right? But all of them are ephemeral or temporary. So these two are there. Learning to differentiate, discern the difference between the two is Viveka. So why is the help of scriptures required? Because through our experience, what do we know? We know only about the temporary things, right? Because we know that everything in the creation, including the galaxies and stars, are only Anityam. So we know only Anityam. We don't know Nityam. The scripture will introduce Nityam and help us understand. Thus, with the help of the scriptures, knowing the differentiating knowledge between the eternal and ephemeral, that is Viveka, qualification number 1. The details are going to come later, so we will just go through the list now. Iha amutra artha phala bhoga viragaha. So the second qualification is the crucial one, which differentiates a spiritual seeker from all materialistic people. What is that? Iha amutra artha phala bhoga viragaha. Viragaha means dispassion. Bhoga means sense pleasures. That is pleasures coming from sense objects, right? So iha mutrartha. Iha means all sense objects available in this world, in the bhuloka, right? So you have iha artha and then amutra artha. Amutra artha means sense objects which come from some other world, promised in some other world. While iha artha means the sense objects of this world, amutra artha means the sense objects of what other world. They say, oh, you will get punya in Swargaloka, you will do this, etc. Right? So that is other world. The scriptures talk about heavenly worlds also, where a person can go after death, and it is described very beautifully in some of the Upanishads also. So everything is so beautiful and wonderful, and it says in Swargaloka, in Devaloka, there is no childhood, there is no jara, right? There is no suffering. You just come with a youthful body, and when your time is up, you just disappear, right? This is all talked about in the Upanishads and the scripture. So you just remain 16, 17 and then just go, right? So much better standard of living. Therefore, ihamutrata means sense objects contained in this world and in the other world also, right? And none of them are given free. We have to earn, right, by doing relevant actions, prayer, puja, rituals, etc. So the phala means results of our efforts, sense pleasures which are born out of sense objects of this world and the other world, and which are earned by appropriate efforts. Towards these, right, all these sense pleasures, what is our attitude? That of viragaha or dispassion. Dispassion does not mean we totally turn away from them or we develop a hatred or we look down upon them. No. We give it only as much importance as is required, right? So we have to understand that they are ephemeral, right? They are addictive in nature, right? They are, because of overindulgence, they can destroy my health, not only my physical health, my emotional health, intellectual health, my spiritual health, all of this. Yes, I may get a lot of money by working non-stop, etc. But it's going to take a toll on physical health. You may not have time to, focus on spiritual activities, meditation, etc. So therefore, a spiritual person is one who respects them, who may enjoy them, whichever are legitimate sense pleasures, he will enjoy, remembering that none of them can be the ultimate goal because they can't give lasting happiness. They can't give lasting peace. They can't give you security. So every human being is basically seeking these three: peace, security, and happiness, right? So we seek this through all the sense objects, through all the human relationships we have. And Shastra gives a warning, right? He says, as long as that punya karma is there, right, it will all be fine. When that ends, they will leave us high and dry. And not only I will lose happiness, but they will give me intense sorrow too, right? Because all of these have intrinsic flaws in them. The entire ephemeral universe is intrinsically defective. While there might be variety, there might be novelty, there is no stability, right? Dependence on the impermanent will produce fear always. And fear is an expression of this human problem, right? And it will always express in the form of insecurity throughout life, and we are holding on to the unstable. Therefore, a spiritual person is one who has understood that emotional dependence on the unstable world is risky. Therefore, he desires to turn his attention from the impermanent to the permanent. So he decides, I don't want to depend on any one of this impermanent world, none of them, right? And this decision not to emotionally depend on any one of the world, including object and people, is called detachment. Then I will use this world only for one purpose. What is that? Not for emotional dependence, but I use the world to discover the permanent, which I can hold on to lifelong. And the world is never an end in itself because it has an ending, right? An ending goal can never be real in life. So I will use the world for discovering the Nitya Vastu, that is the Tattva. Thus deciding that the world is not my ultimate goal is called Vairagyam or Viragaha, right? So how do you use this world for discovering the permanent? That alone is elaborated in the scriptures. So we will be studying this in detail, and by using the world for serving, serve the world for internal growth, use the world for self-knowledge. By studying the scriptures under a guru, right? You will see, you will be familiar with karma yoga, serving everyone. Family is not meant for security, family is meant for service. Then what will give me security? Not family, right? So family is for serving, growing, and ultimately discovering the eternal, which I can hold on to, right? Exactly like, you kind of, when you're traveling in a bus, and if you're just standing there, you're jolted continuously, right? So first thing is, you hold on to something stable, right? So that stability is provided by the Nitya Tattvam, right? So very important to note that this attitude, right, of the dispassion, right, towards all the Anitya Vastu, that is Vairagyam, right? So that's the second one, also known as Viragaha here. Then the third one, Shamadhi Shatka Sampattih, and fourth, Mumukshutvam Cheti. So then the next virtue mentioned is Shamadhi Shatka Sampattih, means inner wealth, right? Literally, it means wealth. But in this context, we are not talking about external wealth, but it's a sixfold virtues or disciplines, right? Shatka means six, right? So priority must be proper. We must make sure that we focus on this internal wealth, which is sixfold. And here he mentions the first one, which is Shamaha. It will be defined later. And we will use the word Shamaha. Adi means the other six, right? So it's totally six. So they will be mentioned later. Then the final one is Mumukshutvam, which is the fourth qualification. Desire for moksha, right? That is the fourth one. Now we talk about four types of human goals called Purushartha. you must have seen in Introduction to Vedanta, the very first session. So Artha means goals and Purusha means human beings, right? So Artha, Kama, Dharma and Moksha, right? So wealth and then Kama, all forms of desires, entertainment, etc. So wealth we possess for the sake of security in life, that is Artha. Kamaha is all forms of entertainment. All types of enjoyment are Kamaha. And Dharma means all types of moral values, Dharmaha. Moral values generate Punyam, and the benefit of moral values is considered to be Punyam, and therefore values and Punyams are considered as one set of goals called Dharma. And the last one is Moksha, freedom from all forms of struggles in life which are caused by self-ignorance and self-misconception. So the grossest form of desire is what? Which is Artha, money, money, money all the time. The next one is Kama, all forms of sense pleasures. This desire is also natural, instinctive, common. It is also common with animals. They also want security, etc. Right? So Artha and Kama come under the grossest form of desire. And the next one is Dharma, a life centered on values and contribution, which also gives me a lot of joy. Happiness, which is more refined form of happiness. Artha and Kama gives me gross joy. Dharma gives me finer joy, right? To discover the finer joy of Dharma and develop a value for that requires more maturity. Giving, right, is more joy than taking, right? So, Artha, Kama, joy to Dharma, Ananda, and finally the most refined joy is called Mokshananda, the Ananda or happiness gained through discovering the ultimate truth behind Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara. So Mumukshutvam means that person who has refined his desire to the form of highest desire called spiritual desire, right? In those days, we had people who had such a great, intense spiritual desire that they renounced all the wealth, name, fame, position and went in search of truth. Buddha renounced everything to search for the truth. Vivekananda renounced everything, asking everyone, have you seen God? Right? So this is the refined kind of desire, which is the spiritual desire. And Swamiji often says, it's like a baby, you know, when you give a lot of toys, one by one, the baby gets irritated with each one and gets bored with each toy and keeps on dropping them, right? So exactly like that, we are also like babies. We keep on playing in this world, trying one goal after the other, one goal after the other, until we realize and we come to the actual or the most or the supreme goal of life. Okay? So a person has to discover this through deep spiritual hunger, and once that hunger comes, all other toys, all other things in this world appear non-relevant. Only that spiritually hungry person knows what is that pang of hunger, right? And when that is there, the pursuit of spirituality will not be a casual one at all. It will become very, very sincere. And when we come to Vedanta, we all have some spiritual hunger, right? And this mumukshutvam is a desire for spiritual enlightenment. But as we go more and we have more and more mental refinement, and Samadhi-Shatka Sampattih comes in, this mumukshutvam also really becomes intense. So the fourfold qualifications are, I'm going to try and put the star mark on slides, which are very important, and it is very useful to get these terms by heart because we will be using them extensively later on in any course on Vedanta, whether it's Upanishads or Gita that you undertake. So Vivekaha, Viragaha, Mumukshutvam and Samadhi-Shatka Sampattih. Now, Bhagini, you can chant after me. Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha.
Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekah Kaha.
Nitya Vastvekam Brahma.
Nitya Vastvekam Brahma.
Tadvyatiriktam Sarvamanityam.
Tadyatiriktam sarvamanityam.
Ayameva nitya nitya vastu vivekaha.
Ayameva nitya nitya vastu vivekaha.
Viragakaha.
Viragah kaha.
Iha svarga bhogeshvicharahityam.
Iha swarga bhogeshvicharahityam.
So, nitya anitya vastu vivekaha taha nitya vastu ekam brahma tad vyatiriktam sarvam anityam ayameva nitya anitya vastu vivekaha. Very easy to follow since it is in the form of an imaginary dialogue, right? So you have to imagine that somebody, the student is asking, right? So what is the discrimination, right? So discrimination here is a positive term. We must be careful. There is no negativity attached here. So if you're uncomfortable with the word discrimination, you can also note that as discerning the difference, right? Between the eternal and non-eternal, right? Now here the student is asking, what exactly do you mean by that, right? He says, Sarvam Anityam. Sarvam Anityam. Through life's experience, we have to learn that all these things we are after, they are all after a certain period of time, whether it is name, fame, or position, and after a certain time, they will all be lost. Therefore, there is a risk involved when I'm emotionally dependent on them. I'm holding on to them like a crutch, right? Or a walking stick. Now, if imagine a person who is, heavy and he leans on the crutches or walking stick which is so thin that it gives away, what will happen? Right? The whole person without any balance or any other support, he'll break his bones by falling, right? So just as leaning on a weak crutch will leave me high and dry, similarly, emotionally leaning on anything perishable has got its own potential risk. The awareness of the risk involved in emotional leaning on the perishable, right? This awareness, right, is very, very important. So generally, human beings are not, far-sighted, and later, when they come to the pain, they start complaining against God. Bhagavan is supposed to be merciful. What mercy he has got. Hereafter, I'm not going to worship God. And many people turn also atheist when the problems come, right? Even though the very same Bhagavan has warned the humanity, what? That your lifestyle is risky. Do not lean on the world, right? You use the world to discover the permanent, right? But the permanent one is the leanable permanent one, which I have to discover through the non-leanable impermanent. So the one who is aware of this fact is called, right? Sarvam Anityam. What is the fact? Sarvam Anityam iti. That is the fact. Sarvam means everything that we experience is Anityam, right? Or non, is impermanent. That is what Buddha also discovered. Of course, his philosophy is different. So thus Sarvam Anityam, expect what? Vyatiriktam, except one thing other than all of this. Tad Vyatiriktam means except one thing which is permanent. And what is that one thing? Which is the Nitya Tattvaha, right? Tattvam. So it is Brahman or Atma. And it is certainly not available for our experience, because in our experience, it is always the whole universe that we experience, and which is impermanent, whether it is a minute atom or it is a galaxy, right? So therefore, since we don't know which is permanent, right, we have to have Shraddha in the scripture, which is going to teach us that that permanent one, here the author names as what? Ekam Brahma, right? Brahman. So the Nitya Vastu is the truth, which is Brahman. The second name is Atma. So you must remember Tattvam, right? Atma, Brahman, all refer to the same thing, eternal reality. So in the religious language, the very same Brahman is called God, right? So in the spiritual portions of the Veda, it is called Brahman. So therefore he says Nitya Vastu Ekam Brahma. And how many eternal things are there? Ekam, only one, right? Advaitam, the non-dual Brahman. So the word Brahman means the limitless one, right? And the big one, Brahma, right? The big one, meaning the biggest one, the infinite one, the limitless one. There is no time-wise limitation, no spatial limitation. So therefore, the goal of life should be discovering Brahman and holding on to it, right? So, and the whole life, like Swamiji says in Haridwar, no, when you go and hold on to that chain and then you get into the water, you can enjoy that current and the flow of the water when you take a dip. You can really enjoy. Imagine you don't hold on to the chain. Exactly like that, right? Hold on to the permanent Brahman and don't hold on to the impermanent world, right? Therefore, enjoy the journey. So this awareness is called Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka. Then Viragaha Kaha. So Vairagyam, which has already been enumerated before, right? So it is Icha Rahityam, basically free from passion. By passion, what we mean is considering any ephemeral thing as the ultimate goal in life, right? So Icha Rahityam means freedom from that passion. So the dispassion towards anything that I experience in the world, right? And passion for the permanent. So dispassion with regard to the impermanent is what is discussed here, right, in this point. So by dispassion, we don't mean turning away or hating it or none of those. Using the world very well, right? Using the world properly for our spiritual journey, but remembering that no impermanent thing can be my ultimate goal in life, right? So you should, the idea is not to develop hatred towards the world, no. The non-eternal is the means to the eternal. That attitude is called dispassion. And the same with regard to all the sense pleasures also. All legitimate sense pleasures are permitted in our scriptures, right? So in fact, and one thing is all of them are perishable. That is one thing that we must remember. In fact, the sense organs themselves are perishable. The healthy attitude of not hating the world, but intelligently using the world in such a way that before I die, I discover the eternal. This is called Vairagyam, which is otherwise called Viragaha. So this is the second qualification. Then the third qualification, the sixfold group of 6 internal disciplines, extremely important. Shamadhi Sadhana Sampattih ka.
Shamadhi Sadhana Sampattih ka.
Shamodama Uparamasti Diksha Shraddha Samadhanam Cheti.
Shamodama Uparamasti Tiksha Shraddha Samadhanam Cheti.
Shamakkaha.
Shamakkaha.
Mano Nigraha.
Mano Nigraha.
Damakkaha.
Damakkaha.
Chakshuradi Bahyendriya Nigraha.
Chakshuradi Bahyendriya Nigraha.
So the student asks, what do you mean by the sixfold inner wealth or inner virtues? Sadhana Sampattih means the wealth of inner virtues, beginning with Shamaha. First the Guru enumerates them and thereafter he will define each one of them. Number 1 is Shamaha. Definition will come later. Damaha is the second one. Uparamaha, Titiksha, Shraddha, and then Samadhanam, Chaiti. The 6 of them. Chaiti is not 7th one, just 6 of them. Okay. And what is the meaning of each one of them? The teacher explains. So just this slide is for you to quickly see this. So Shamaha, thought discipline. Damaha, sense control. Uparamaha, that's basically, we'll see in greater detail about it. It is basically withdrawal or quietude so that one can get more quality time for self-inquiry. Titiksha, endurance, forbearance. Shraddha, faith in scriptures. Samadhanam, concentration or focusing power. So, shamaha, taha. So, what do you mean by shamaha? Mano nigraha. Manaha means mind or thought. Therefore, mental discipline or thought discipline is called shamaha. It is considered to be extremely important for the pursuit of the spiritual goal itself, right? So, it is required because the mind can and does continuously generate thoughts. The job of the mind is continuously generating thoughts, not only during waking state, but during dream also thoughts are generated. They alone become the dream, and even in sleep, very subtle form of thoughts are generated. So, one is, some of them are voluntarily entertained by me when I am planning a program, when I want to solve a particular problem. I myself am thinking that of some things around that, right? So these thoughts are deliberately or willfully generated by me. They are voluntary thoughts. The second set of thought is, as you can guess, whenever we are not deliberately engaging the mind in any particular field, the mind can't keep quiet. The mind will keep on generating thoughts. These thoughts are involuntary thoughts, and mind is a very unique instrument which has a voluntary function as well as an involuntary function. Exactly like breathing. Only in pranayama you are regulating the breathing. Otherwise, the whole day you are breathing in and out, right? So exactly like that, mind will also keep generating some thoughts or the other. So mano nigraha is the capacity to handle involuntary thoughts. So the capacity to handle the process of involuntary thoughts, so that at will I can vacate the involuntary thoughts. Look at how deep our rishis have thought earlier, right? So because the mind is such a valuable and powerful equipment, and that mind I can use for voluntary thoughts only when it is available. If I permit the involuntary thoughts to be there in the mind, I will not be able to use the voluntary thoughts to plan or do something useful. It's exactly like, renting a house, your house. You give it to someone and then they take it away and they refuse to vacate. Then it is no longer your house, right? Similarly, your mind is a very, very valuable instrument, and involuntary thoughts occupy the mind. And if you let them occupy and they don't vacate the minute you want them to vacate, the second you want them to vacate, then that preoccupied mind is not available for any constructive work that I want to do. So I may choose to do some prayer. I may choose to do japa. I may choose to attend Tattvabodha class. But if you have to listen word by word, the mind has to be available that entire hour. Now, before that, if you have had some heated argument with somebody, those thoughts are going to occupy the mind. And if you do not have the capacity to displace them and say, no, you are going to now listen to the class, it is a problem, right? So, very interesting. That is why sometimes we actually chant prayers. Today also I tried to switch on Tattvabodha before the class, because then you kind of, at least the thoughts are centered around that. You're trying to regulate your thoughts, right? So, all emotional disturbances start with such involuntary thoughts only. And gradually they become a concern, from concern, anxiety, anxiety to fear, fear to panic attack, right? In fact, one Shivaratri day, Swamiji spoke about thought displacement skill. Very interesting talk it was, right? So, very useful faculty to have even for your normal functioning, right? And becomes very, very important for the spiritual pursuit, right? So, the involuntary thoughts can become very serious emotional disturbances if we don't manage them. So, thought management, that capacity to willfully bring in voluntary thoughts and put an end to involuntary thoughts, that is shamaha, right? So, mano nigraha is very, very important. And the next one is damaha. So, he says bahendriya nigraha. So, indriya means the 5 sense organs. So, they are going to be enumerated later. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, etc. They are called sense organs. And because they sense the external world, right? The external world is also divided into 5 segments. Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. We'll see all these in great detail. So the world can enter into my mind only through these 5. And Damaha means learning to restrain the sense organs at will. So learning to restrain the sense organs at will is Damaha. And what is the purpose of restraining? If we are uncontrollably exposed to the whole world, then the world can enter any part of the world, basically has the capacity to generate involuntary thoughts. They can enter and create involuntary thoughts. So I look at an object and immediately it can generate thoughts. This is what is being exploited by all the branding, marketing, etc. Right? So this talks about that aspect, involuntary thoughts, etc. Right? So very important. So Damaha, the sense organs are the ones which actually the gateway to the mind itself, right? So any segment of the world can become addictive if I am careless. So being alert in the worldly transactions is called Damaha. So Bahyendriya Nigraha is restraining the external sense organs, right? And in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna gives the example of a turtle. When it senses some danger from the external world, it withdraws all the 4 legs and the head also, right? And it enters into a shell until the threat or danger is gone. So the capacity to withhold when there is a temptation or provocation. Chakshur Adi Bahya Indriya Nigraha. Chakshu means eyes, Adi means the other external sense organs. Right? They are all external as compared to the mind, which is the internal sense organ. That is why he's used the word Bahya here. Right? So we will see more in the next class. I'll take questions after Poorna. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, I see some people have raised their hands. Will we be provided an audio to chant the entire text? Since it is necessary to get by heart, it is advisable to go through it as many number of times as possible. I'll provide you the link. You can also search Swami Paramarthananda, Tattvabodha, YouTube. You can find his chant. It will be useful to definitely become familiar with it. Ram Seshan Mahoday, you can go ahead.
I'm not able to see your video. The rest of the screen is visible.
Okay. Raj, could you be able to help?
Only your audio is I can hear, but I cannot see the video.
Okay, I think it's something to do with your setting. Anybody else has this problem?
When we are in full screen, it is not shown for me. When I have exited the full screen, your video is shown now.
Oh, okay. Okay, so maybe you need to try that, sir. Bharadwaj, if you can help him offline, it will be useful.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sriram, please go ahead.
You talked about sadhana chatushtayam, one of which is nitya anitya vastu viveka. But is there anything beyond nitya anitya vastu viveka? Once you have nitya anitya vastu viveka, isn't that everything? So what is the mention of the other 3 sadhana?
Oh yes, nitya anitya vastu viveka is one aspect, discerning the difference between. This is qualification, right? So just because you understand the value of the permanent and the impermanent doesn't make you ready for this journey. You need some other things. One is that desire, intense desire, mumukshutvam. You also need Samadhi Sampattih. If you do not have Samadhi Shatka Sampattih, your mind is not going to be ready to absorb this teaching, which is very, very abstract. So that is why all four are important.
Yeah, but once you have Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka, what you're saying is it is not just a mere knowledge. You have to live it every second. You have to dwell in the self. That is why you need the other three qualifications.
Correct, absolutely. But to understand Nitya Nitya Vastu difference, it's cyclical. Without Samadhi Shatka Sampattih, you will not be able to get there. That is why it is being insisted. Without Chitta Shuddhi, you will not be able to understand Vedanta at all. We will revisit this at the end of the session also. So, Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha is first step. Understanding that, oh, there is something which is permanent, which is beyond the world. But how to understand what is that permanent thing? Today, people who are attending the class, I am telling them that there is something Nityam. If you have not had previous exposure, they don't know what that Nityam is, right? So how do you understand that? For that, you need Samadhi Shatka Sampattih, because Chitta Shuddhi becomes a prerequisite for even going through the subject matter itself. That is the reason. Sometimes even Janmas. So ultimately, yes, there's only Nityam, Nitya Brahman and nothing else.
You need to have the knowledge of Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka, and you need to live it. Every moment your living should be consistent with that Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka.
That's true. So to get there, to understand what that is, you need certain things, right? So that is what we are discussing.
Thank you.
Anyway, Yuveda, please go ahead.
Ma'am, I have two questions. This is regarding dispassion. It is the absence of enjoyments here and in heaven. Like, could you elaborate on heaven? Like, what is it? Is it the point post moksha, or what is it, the Vaikuntha, or like what it is? And second question is, you had a statement saying you said it, non-eternal is the means to eternal.
Correct.
Could you elaborate on that also?
Okay. Non-eternal is the means to eternal is exactly what I was speaking just couple of minutes back and to the other gentleman, and we're going to take time to understand that. What does it mean? Basically, we have to live a life of, this Samadhi Shatka Sampattih, then understand the subject matter itself and do Karma Yoga, right? In the process of doing Karma Yoga, you gain Chitta Shuddhi. So Gita talks about all of this, right? So all of these non-eternal things, what are they? Body, mind, family, possessions, professions, as Swamiji puts it as Pancha Anatma. He likes to use the term Pancha Anatma. So you use all of these non-eternal things to ultimately achieve what? The eternal goal. That is the purpose of human life, but nobody ever tells us that. That is the problem, right? So that was this point. Now coming back to the Svargaloka point, now the scriptures talk about moksha, which is here and now. I will not elaborate beyond this, because as we go deeper into Tattvabodha, we will be able to understand my statements. Some of my statements won't make meaning now. So, Jivan Mukti is here and now, and that is moksha in Advaita Parampara, Advaita philosophy. Now, Swargaloka is described in several scriptures, Upanishads, Gita also, where it is said that you can, do punyam. What kind of punyam, if you do, which loka you will go. There are different gradations in it. So you go to those lokas, wherever you go, they are all returnable. You go there, you spend your punyam, the punyam meter starts running, because you cannot get further punyam there in any of those lokas. So you exhaust the punya and then you come back, right? So how does the punya get exhausted? What is the equation? All of that we'll see as we start moving into the text proper.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Got a bit of clarity. I think further we go, it will be better.
Yeah. Krishna Prasad, please go ahead.
Namaste, madam. I have a couple of questions. One is adhikari. How do I determine if I become a qualified adhikari? Like, I have Viveka checklist, I checked it, Vairagya, yes. something like that, and samadhi checklist, and then mumukshvata. Of course, there's a big tall order, but is there a self-evaluation tool, or I should seek help of a guru, or what is the process?
Guru is definitely required. And also we will be speaking about, what are the external indicators, etc. Swamiji uses a term FIR reduction and triple C increase. I'll speak about it in detail as we go along. FIR reduction is after an emotional impact, right? How often do you have an emotional impact? What is the intensity of the emotional disturbance? What is the recovery period after the emotional disturbance, right? That FIR starts coming down, and triple C, calmness, confidence, and cheerfulness increases. So this is one direct measurement if we are all from the corporate world and we want some measurement. So it's really advisable to use a Vedanta diary so that you yourself can start seeing where you started and where you are. There is no competition with anybody whatsoever in this wonderful journey. So you start somewhere and you reach somewhere. It could be multiple janmas, it could be this janma itself, but the benefit is immense, right? And so we will see more of it as we go along. And definitely all of us have some qualification, as Swamiji says, because without that qualification, you can never sign up for Tattvabodha or Introduction to Vedanta. That much I can tell you. This is now my, I don't know, my 5th or 6th session, and I've been going to Swamiji for so many years. There are lots of people who will join and who will drop out. People who have sustained interest in this, you can rest assured that you have this qualification in some percentage, otherwise you cannot get here. And it is the punya of several janmas that gives you this opportunity.
Thank you. So my next question is, we use the word arthapala bhoga viragaha. Why the term arthapala, not karmapala, like compared to Bhagavad Gita, karmanyevadhikarasya mahaphaleshu. So shouldn't be, same as karmapala?
Here basically it is just to indicate the two different worlds, right? The one that we are exposed to and the one we are not exposed to. That's all. It doesn't talk beyond that. So don't attribute too much into that statement, because in the introductory statement, Gita obviously goes into so much of detail about karma phalam, etc. And we also see more as we get into the karma topic here, right? So you just take it as two different worlds, the one that we are aware of and the one we are not aware of. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, somebody has asked a question here. If I understood correctly, you were saying use family for service. Does it mean practice karma yoga by serving the family? Yes. It especially becomes very important when it comes to our children and grandchildren, etc. Without expectations, can we serve them for their own good, right? And stay dispassionate and away from getting too much into their lives, etc. We can practice all of them. So karma yoga is basically you can do service with your family, or we're going to see Pancha Mahayajna in the next session itself. So we'll talk about it in great detail. Vasantan, please talk. Vasantana.
My name is Vasanta Naganathan.
Oh, Vasanta Naganathan. Okay, there's no gap there.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah. In the last class, you mentioned that Vedanta is not only for older people or senior citizens, and it is meant for everybody.
Correct.
I do agree with you. It should be for everybody, right from, young child who can understand a little, and the teenager who is at the threshold of adulthood, and for the young people, who are in the grahastha and, in their peak of their career, and of course for the later years of retirement and senior citizens. How do you, take this journey from childhood to youth and the young grahastha and the senior citizen. So the young child will understand very little. And especially the youth, young child, at least, you can tell them and they believe you to some extent. Of course, these days they don't. But the youth, they are at the threshold and they face so many challenges. And at the same time, there are so many distractions and so many goals, material or whatever goals you may call it, whether it is material or immaterial, whatever it is. So how do you make them understand that there is something which can take them towards this goal of moksha?
See, as we go through the subject matter itself and, as we go through Gita, we realize that some portions of this can be abstracted and taught to different age groups. But with children, right, and all the way up to, say, school and college, early college, we have to stick to Pancha Maha Yajna. We will see that in detail in the next session. Deva Yajna, Bhuta Yajna, those things can be taught. And I've actually done some slides and I've addressed some school students and college people. We can't get into life after death and all of that with that group. So we can divide this into, we can focus more on bhakti, ekarupa Ishvara, and the subtler form of worship in the form of, Vishwarupa Ishvara, the worship, etc. But we have to do that only slowly. And I think now there is an increased awareness because I at least know of a couple of management schools that and engineering schools that do Gita, and they have woven it with their management classes. So I think we are getting there. But in each family, you may have one or two people who don't believe in this. And I do agree with you that I'm seeing more youngsters, more proportion of youngsters not really valuing this. But I think it will start changing as we bring it back into schools and colleges. And as parents also, when we as parents and grandparents get into a routine of doing puja and lighting the lamp, etc., the children see us and also kind of change. So that's all I can say now. It's a much larger topic. We'll take it up maybe some other day. Any other questions related to?
Yeah, I just want to know the pathway. That is the thing. Yeah, I mean, especially for the youth. I am concerned about the youth today in the sense that, they are the future and they are at a stage, they form opinion and they build the foundation for their future life. So I feel that this is the time when the pathway is the right pathway for them.
Yeah, we are doing that. In fact, there is one course in Vyoma which we are just structuring. I think it's called Vedanta for teenagers or something. We'll definitely, announce that. By the way, just make note of it because I forgot when it is starting, etc.
Yeah, that will be really helpful, ma'am. Yeah. That will be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yogi.
Namaste, Mahodaya. Just a quick question. I know it's top of the hour. With respect to Nityam, Anityam, is the concept related to time? How is time defined in the Vedas or Tattvabodha or Vedanta actually? Or is it a topic for another time? We can park it, please.
No, I'll just tell you in one line. The Nityam here, eternal, is even beyond time. That's all. So everything else is within time and the Nityam is beyond time. So we'll get into the details of it later, but this much you can know.
Dhanyavada, Mahodaya.
Poorna Chandra.
Ram Mahoday. Yes, this is my second class, and I was living in a world, having been in a corporate world for 40 donkey years. Then I found that I was a donkey. I left the corporate world. Then I thought that the best moksha I can attain is through entrepreneurship. So 1 decade of entrepreneurship. Then I realized, yeah, great. I've climbed so many ladders and so many successes I've attained. And today when I hear you in your second class itself, though I have reached the ladders of success, which I called myself all these years, what I have found is the ladders were leaning on the wrong wall, madam. So it's great. It's a great, what is dawning upon me, having what I thought I had achieved was achieved against leaning on wrong wall. This is the right wall which I should have leaned on all along to have enjoyed all these years of successes. Thank you very much.
I can relate so much to you, because this kind of connection happens at different stages in one's life, at different ages. So it is just that you will see about it, right? Some punyam somewhere at some stage makes us come to this, but nobody in this class needs to be concerned about that, because it is a journey of janmas. And you will see, as Lord Krishna promises in Gita, that we are all going to only progress and there is no going back. So we should all feel very happy about it.
Because, when I used to do CEO training and all, I don't know, what was I teaching them? I think, did I mislead them? I don't know. Anyway.
That is true. That is true. It'll be interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you have a chance to speak?
No, that's okay, madam. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste. I have 3 questions, madam. The first one is that book author, is it Shankaracharya or Paramatnanda? Swami Paramatnanda.
Wait, I tell you, there is a problem. This book has been written by one of the Shankaracharyas. Okay. So the Tattvabodha is a book written by, that is why you don't see Swamiji's name here. It is written by one of the Shankaracharyas, as I explained in the first class.
Yes.
But this is being printed by Arshavidya Gurukulam.
Okay. Okay.
That's all.
Okay.
So any of the Tattvabodha texts, not a problem. Many people have written commentary on it.
Yeah, because there's one by Chinmaya Mission, so I wanted to buy the right one. So I will go by the Arshavidya Gurukulam then, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm only going to use the text, and I'm going to use what Swamiji taught me, that's all.
Yeah. Now the one which is, because I had no problem in seeing your screen, the Shlokas and all the interpretation. Now the same things are there in this textbook of Arshavidya.
It also has a word by word meaning.
Okay. Okay. So that is very good. And this green star charts, which at a glance, which you have shown, which is really good. Now that will be included in those are your notes and it's not in the textbook, right?
Correct. That is why. See, I will be using a lot of, I have to, the other person who spoke to me about corporate life, I think that has helped me put together the slides. So
yes.
you use all those pictures for understanding. You can all download and use it. I'm more than happy for you to use it.
Yeah.
Every week after the class, I'll put it up.
Oh, great, great. So it will be uploaded on that YouTube.
No, into the site where you have the course sanskritfromhome.org.
Yeah, it will be on that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So
now
as we move forward, there'll be a lot of diagrams and tables, etc.
Oh, I love that. That's being meticulous and it's easy to refer. I love tables and diagrams because that makes it easy to understand. The other thing is the slokas on its own, which you recited it so well, only the sloka part without. Is that a separate chapter on that, or is it all together in one session?
Which shloka? The first part?
Like this, Shamadhi Sadhana Sampattih kaha.
Okay. That Swamiji's is available in YouTube. You can just use it. No problem.
Okay. It's the same sort of tune. Okay. Because that is very nice to even hear it, Yeah.
There. I also have another link where I've chanted, but maybe I can give it to you also. I'll send it.
Okay, okay, that will be good, madam, because I have your email, so I'll send you an email and maybe I can get the link.
Sure, sure, sure.
Yeah, yeah. And the third thing is, I think I forgot to write it down, the 6 things, but I forget one. It is Shama, Dama, Uparama, Titiksha, Shraddha. Which is the other one?
Samadhanam.
Samadhan, yeah. The most
Samadhanam.
important.
Yeah. But we'll go through this in detail, don't worry.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Thank you, madam, very much. Yeah, very nice. Yeah.
There's one point here in the chat box. Desire for mumukshu is also a type of desire. Should we not expect mumukshu to happen naturally rather than by way of desire? No. Before you get there, you need that desire. Without that strong, intense desire for moksha, you will not be able to do, you will not be able to allocate time for this, you will not be able to make it your priority, and you will not be able to understand and learn this subject. So we definitely need that desire. This is a good desire to have, right? Mumukshutvam. Right? Class notes, as I said, you can get from sanskritfromhome.org. Okay. Then let me see if there's any other Q&A here. You had mentioned at one point that Shastras do not prescribe abstinence from dharmartha kama, but shama and dhamma are control and withdrawal in the face of distractions, right? The response to this is that we kind of give it as much importance as possible, as required for the situation, but we don't get overly obsessed with dharmartha kama. That is what is mentioned here, because you do need money for living, you need to take care of certain basic things, but giving over importance to the impermanent is what is dissuaded here. Can you please upload this PDF file of Tattvabodha, which is being referred today? File already uploaded is not as clear. Okay, the slides will anyway be uploaded. I'll try and see if a better version of the text can be uploaded. Okay, on Shama, you gave an example of an argument before the class, the thoughts of which remain during the class as being involuntary thoughts getting in the way. Is this not a voluntary thought? Are not the usual nonsensical buzz that goes on in the mind involuntary? No, all of these are involuntary. As long as you are not thinking about something, it is all involuntary thought only. Okay, on the Adhikaritvam, I spoke. Are there any methods to control the rise of involuntary thoughts? And would like to know more about thought displacement. I'll try and get you the link to that thought displacement skill talk. Otherwise, I will incorporate it into one of my classes and I will talk about it. There are methods, gradual meditation. There are lots of types of meditation which I have covered in. Yes, I've covered in the Introduction to Vedanta. The first few talks, you can take a look at it. Okay, I think we've spent quite a lot of time. So I'll stop here and we will meet next week. Is there anybody else who has, there's some, Sriram, did you raise your hand again or is that the old one?
So I had a quick, so you mentioned you have a 5-fold talk on Introduction to Vedanta. The link was not there in the slideware that was made available last week. If you could make that available, that would be good.
Oh, okay. I'll put it into this this week's thing then. I'll put it in the first slide and then, yeah. Okay then. So, namaste, dhanyavadaha, and we meet next week.